Hey, what is up? So I wanted to talk about Titanfall 1 versus Titanfall 2. This is something I've talked about here and there, and I'm not sure. Sometimes it comes up. I think that's what happened. Maybe that's what I randomly just felt like talking about Titanfall 1 versus 2. And it's something that I'm really passionate about because I loved part 1. Like I absolutely loved it. To me, part 1 was the future of multiplayer shooters. And then 2 happened and completely destroyed every ounce of hope that I had for future multiplayer shooters. Because Titanfall was new. It brought something new. It changed it up. It isn't completely new that, like it's a lot of stuff that we've seen before, but it's the new stuff is the flow of it. The parkour specifically, the wall running, it was just so perfectly designed where you could almost pretty much cover an entire map never touching the ground and also getting kills, especially if you got good. For me personally, I noticed this was much easier to do on a mouse and keyboard than on a controller. For some reason, I personally have issues strafing on a controller. I don't know if it's the dead zone or what, but I have a real hard time strafing on a freaking controller. No, it's just easier to tap that WS key, just or whatever it is, WA, the keyboard. It's easier to do left and right on the keyboard than on the controller for me. But so just that was a huge thing. That parkour system was amazing. The map design was just beautiful. It was built for it, and you could tell it wasn't even, like if jumping into Titanfall 1 for the first time, it wasn't like you were gonna know exactly what to do, but it felt so natural. That was the thing I always forget about it. It felt so natural. Like it was, you didn't have to worry about it. As long as if you jumped at the wall, it was easy to just learn it and just go with it and get better at it. It was freaking awesome. And then part 2 happened, and I remember when I did open beta impressions on that, I called it Black Ops 3.5 because that's what it felt like to me. And I remember I had read an interview by I think it was Gamasutra with the Vince Sampanelli. I can't remember. It might not have been Vince. It might have been somebody else. Actually, I think it was somebody else, not Vince. I don't. It's been a while since I've read that interview. It's been like at least a year and stuff. And I can't. All I remember is I'll never forget one of the key parts of that interview was at the very end of the interview where they talked about laning Titanfall 2, and I was like, well, you just destroyed Titanfall. So I had this hope. I had hope that more games would come out like Titanfall. More would try to do this super cool thing that they did, with adding the parkour. Not just that, the way bots work. And they worked, the reason the bots worked was because of how big the maps were. And the reason the maps were so big was because it was Titans. So for me personally, my favorite thing about Titanfall was the parkour, was the openness of the maps and being able to flank and have so much fun, and how fluid it was and everything. The Titans were super cool, but they were other people's favorites and not mine, right? I liked playing the Titans. I drove them and I got kills with them. I thought they were really fun, but I liked. It's kind of like people with that play Call of Duty and they're like, I'm a boots on the ground. I don't like jumping around. I like that in the futuristic Call of Duties, but that's what it's like to me. I think about the people that are like boots on the ground. That's when I play Titanfall. I'm the pilot. Like I don't want to play the Titan. I'll have it follow me and kill or guard or whatever, But sometimes I'd get in it, have some fun with it. It's not because it wasn't fun. I just prefer to be the pilot, I don't remember where I was going with that, but so there were improvements in Titanfall 2, but it was mostly related to the mechs themselves, the Titans. But it was funny to me because I preferred the loadout system in part 1. Basically, in part 1, you got to pick the Titan that was based on either being tanky, having more health, or being fast, or being balanced in between. Because the fast mech, the Strider in part 1, was really weak, but it was like super dodgy, like really maneuverable, and that kind of a thing. And you could use the same guns on each of them. I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, you could use the same guns and you could pick your loadout that way, much like a soldier. You can pick your gun and not have to be stuck with the Titan. I did like how they did it in part 2 because it gave each Titan it made them a character rather than just being a suit or whatever. But I didn't think it was needed. Some people like that. I thought it was cool. I didn't really hate it or anything, but I prefer the Titan loadouts from part 1. And then there's the rodeoing system in part one. To me, was way better. It was way more fun. It was more engaging. In part two, you just jump on the mech, throw the grenade, and you watch the animation. Jump on the Titan, and you watch the animation, and then you're off. In part one, you jumped on the Titan, you had to pull out this, whatever it was called, you had to pull out like an armor thing, and then shoot at the heart, whatever you call it, the core, the heart, what you had to shoot at it. You could stay up there the whole time and shoot that thing until the Titan was dead, until somebody got you off that Titan's back, which I could see that being, a complaint, because if you don't get help, or from a teammate or something, it's not as easy to counter. There were countermeasures though. They had that electric field as one. You also get out of your Titan to shoot the guy that's on top of your Titan, But I definitely like the rodeoing better in part one as well. So I mean, like, for the most part, to me, one was just so much better. The biggest thing about one was map design though. It was open. It was parkour designed, like 2 had parkour, but it wasn't designed for it because it was laned. It wasn't designed for you to be able to go wherever you want. It was designed, they specifically turned it back into freaking Call of Duty with bigger maps, left, right, and middle. You got stuck going, and it's bigger maps, so you have more to go through, but it's still laned, right? Like, it's a huge difference. If you ever played part one and then played part two, you know what I'm talking about. And I know I've seen it from real fans that loved part one, but I've also talked to people that played part one, they didn't like it, and they loved part two a lot more. So clearly there's a preference. Like, people prefer the lanes, and then there's people like me who don't want to play those lanes, can't stand the lanes, can't stand getting camped, being pushed one section because we can't. That's it. That's just boring. But I grew up with those kinds of games. I started that way when I first started playing shooter games. As games, it was normal for me to play a shooter online where it was laned. But after years playing that, I got sick of it, and I prefer playing open games like Doom or Uncharted. Especially Titanfall 1. That was just awesome. I always say the best thing about part 2 is having Titanfall 1's maps, and that's not enough to keep me playing, and I can't play it because most of the maps that I ended up playing were 2s. So I actually wrote notes because I made a video before this and I rambled too much and I wanted to get more specific. The bots. The one thing that's funny about the bots is because it was a good thing and a bad thing. I remember one of my biggest complaints of part 1 was getting more bot kills than pilot kills, and it wasn't like exactly the fault of the game. It was just the way it's designed, right? And I still say I would put more bots in it because there were times where it would be empty. Once everybody on each team we've killed all the bots, it felt like a while. It felt like a few minutes or something. Maybe it's a couple minutes, but it just felt like empty for a while. Once both teams clear out the bots, it just takes a while for the bots to come back. I even noticed that in part 2, I think, sometimes. So the problem is getting too many bot kills, not enough player kills. But then if you're, when that happens where it gets empty, where the bots are all dead, then you're running through an empty map and it's kind of boring. The whole purpose of those bots is to give you something to do, to keep you in the action, keep you in the game, keep your points rolling in between fighting players, because the maps are so big and designed for the Titans, right? So it's a tricky one. There's definitely some balance trouble there, and they did a great job on that, but it could be improved. Still, like I said, I think there'd be nicer to have a faster spawn rate on bots. And the cool thing too about the bots, I remember using them as a strategy. You get near bots, especially the friendly bots. I think they removed friendly ones in part 2, and then they updated it later, I forget. But if you get near friendly bots, you can blend in. Not like, you don't look like them, but you kind of just, you use them as cover, right? And then you can also use enemy bots as a lure. You go shooting enemy bots, and you show up on the radar, and people know where you're at, and you can lure enemies that way. But you're also still getting kills. You're not just randomly firing your gun, although you could do that too. But it's more fun to kill things and lure an enemy over than to just fire your gun in the middle of an empty map hoping somebody comes to you. But yeah, there was that was very cool too. So I remember part of it, like that part where bots run out and you have to wait for them to spawn and stuff. At those points, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like playing Battlefield, where you can literally run for 5 minutes and not get a kill, or get killed at the end of that 5 minutes. I'm not even kidding. If you play these games like Battlefield or Titanfall, where when that happens, it's very possible to run around for 5 minutes with no action at all. It happens. So that's why I would give Titanfall more bots or a better spawn timer, even though I would rather kill players, you know. But it's just part of the fun of the way Titanfall was designed, and that was pretty cool. I always like that. I went over the map design, future multiplayer shooters. Okay, oh, I got everything. Yeah, I said everything. I covered it, man. I got my notes. I made a video before this that was long, and I liked it, but I was like, you know what? There was a couple things I missed. I forgot to talk about the rodeoing, and I rambled too much. I wasn't very specific, so I wanted to come back and do that. Anyways, so Titanfall 1 overall, just loved it a lot more. Mostly because of map design. Mostly. You know, like I said, the loadouts for the Titans I liked more in part 1, but that's a preference. I've seen a lot of people talk about part 2. No. Sorry. Wow. You know, I don't know. I think it's funny to me, like when any of my friends or anybody I see say that they think Titanfall 2 is better, because my natural reaction, if I see anybody saying 2 is better than 1, is I can't help but think, my first thought, if I ever see that said, is you didn't play part 1. And if you did play part 1, you didn't play enough of it. Because part 1 is just so much better. It's so much better. And of course, I'm not saying like I'm right and they're wrong. It's just my thought. That's what I feel. It's what I'm, you know, I'm just like, what? No way, you know, and I'm not the only one. Trust me. I seen I was, you know, one of the first things I did after playing the beta part 2 and just having my hope destroyed for the future of multiplayer shooters. I was on the forums, of course, and I was reading, and I was like, because sometimes I do feel like I'm alone. It happens, you know. We like a game or we don't like a game, and everybody else loves the game that you're like, what? Or everybody else hates the game that you're like, I love this game. You know, that happens, right? So I was checking it out, and a lot of people, especially deep fans that had hundreds of hours played on part 1, they were all saying the same exact thing I was, and it was map design. That was like the number one difference, map design. You know, just laning it up, and it was less parkour, even though you have that mobility in part 2, but it's definitely not the same as part 1. And if you ever play, you can easily see it, because they have, I'm not sure how many maps they put from part 1 into part 2, but when you play the Titanfall 1 maps, it's a drastic difference. Like this map that's on the screen right now, that's one of the maps that they put in part 2. And it's a cool map. That's not even one of their better maps. I'm not I think they picked it because it was popular. It makes sense the way it plays out. The way it's designed is, it's a little bit, I guess, gets players put together more often, because the other maps are more about like going around, flanking, and just kind of going in and out and everywhere. And this one is actually one of the more open maps on Titanfall 1. Oh, well, they switched maps anyways. I had one other quick thought I had for a second, and then it escaped me while I was talking about that map. Damn it. Well, I guess I might add it to the comments. I don't know. Oh, the video. That's what I was gonna say. Super cool montage. I don't know who this person is. I was looking for different videos to play in the background while I talked about Titanfall, and it took longer than I expected to find a good freaking Titanfall 1 video. There's a lot of Titanfall 2 ones out there. Probably, if I went back a year, you know, scrolling through the pages of YouTube, I probably could have found some other ones as well, but this was a pretty good one. The YouTuber is named Rechy. I might be pronouncing that wrong. It's RECHYYY. I'll link it in the description if you feel like checking out his channel and all that. Thank you very much for watching. I will talk to you later. If you have any thoughts on this, leave a comment in my comment section and say what's up. Bye bye.